more on what all of this means, I do want to bring in attorney John Day to our program. John, thank you for taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Stephanie, thanks for having me.
So I first want to start off with Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. She is disputing her termination over these allegations of mortgage fraud. What legal grounds does President Trump have to try and fire her from her position on the Federal Reserve Board?
Right. Well, this is a first of its kind situation. We've never had a time when a president has sought to fire one of the governors of the Federal Reserve. The allegation from the Trump administration is that Cook committed some type of misconduct. Now, to remove a governor, there really has to be a level of misconduct that's never been done where a governor's been removed simply for a policy dispute. So what the Trump administration has to do, at least the way that things are constructed now, is establish that there was some type of misconduct. The allegations seem to be that Cook engaged in mortgage fraud by having more than one or having multiple mortgages. There haven't been any charges filed, no criminal charges filed against Cook. So it's going to be a situation where the Trump administration is going to have to establish misconduct, most likely in a court system, and then an an appellate system, an appellate situation, and probably going all the way to the Supreme Court. But the idea is that if they can make a misconduct charge stick, and they can remove her on the basis of that misconduct charge, it would really be the first time we've seen this. And so they have to be very specific about what the allegations are and what she allegedly had done wrong. We haven't seen all the details about this yet, but this thing is developing very fast.
And as you mentioned, this has never happened before. This would set, I imagine, a very significant legal precedent. And you also mentioned likely going all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Right. I think everybody anticipates that the Supreme Court is ultimately going to be deciding this. But again, it's a test here. It's the idea of the Trump administration that they're the ones who are elected. The Federal Reserve are non-elected governors of that board. President Trump is making the argument that he was elected by the people. He's trying to seek accountability from this bureaucratic organization that was not elected. And so that is sort of underlying their key argument, which is that the Trump administration is trying to get accountability. They were elected by the public, the Federal Reserve not elected by the public, and that establishes in the mind of the Trump administration their ability to go in and remove a governor from the board, especially on allegations of misconduct. Again, they're not claiming it's based on a policy dispute. They're claiming it's based on concrete examples of misconduct by that governor.
Now the attorney for Lisa Cook is urging a U.S. judge to let Cook keep her job while she fights this attempted firing. You know, can you walk us through the legal timeline of all of this when it comes to what we can expect next and when?
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see if a federal judge does issue an order that prohibits the Trump administration from terminating her, firing her, at least right now. In other words, the court may say, you know, we're going to hold everything status quo while this case develops in the court system. But again, it's a unique test. It's the first of its kind test where you have a sitting president trying to remove a governor from the Federal Reserve Board, and making those specific allegations. The governor of course, Cook is fighting back. Her lawyers are saying this is politically motivated. It's a policy dispute. The Federal Reserve has always been a quasi-independent agency, one that is not beholden to the sitting administration. And so, again, there's no playbook for this kind of activity. There's nothing that we've seen before that gives us a roadmap as to where this is going to go. Again, ultimately, yes, it's probably going to be in front of the Supreme Court. They're going to be deciding what authority does a president have to remove a governor of the Federal Reserve and on what grounds.
Now, Lisa Cook's situation is different from the former CDC director's situation, but she's also going through the legal system to fight her termination. And I wonder what kind of legal protections exist for federal employees facing dismissal or terminations from their positions.
Right. Well, again, we've seen this in the past in terms of the Trump administration trying to put his own people in place and have people who are following the agenda that the administration is setting. Again, this is a little bit different from the Federal Reserve case. The Fed has always been that semi-independent or mostly autonomous agency whose members are not beholden to the administration. CDC is a little bit different. It's under Health and Human Services. It's under Robert Kennedy Jr., who is obviously a Trump appointee. And the argument from Monterez's lawyers are, well, only the president can remove her. Well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the president's handpicked Secretary of HHS, and that's where CDC reports. So it's a different situation. There's no history of independence from an administration at the CDC or Centers for Disease Control. So Dr. Monterez is a much different position than the Federal Reserve governor, because there's no history of autonomy. There's no history of independence from the administration. And it's much more likely that her removal would be pretty quickly upheld by the courts, because she doesn't have an argument that somehow she has some kind of protection as head of a executive agency.
Very different scenarios, and we do know that RFK Jr. is going to testify on Capitol Hill later on this week. Let's go back to Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. When it comes to the independence of this agency, can you talk about legally? When they are elected and they serve, what legal grounds could you use for termination? You did mention some of those misconducts, but beyond that, what else could be an argument for that?
Well, that's all we've seen at this point, because there's never been an attempt to remove a governor based on a policy dispute or a difference over whether or not that governor supports the sitting president's agenda. So the rules, the regulations regarding the Fed governors are specific on the issue of removal for misconduct. Well, what is misconduct? Things like criminal conduct, convictions, moral turpitude, things that are very specific. So what the Trump administration is hoping to establish is that this allegations of mortgage fraud, mortgage misconduct, a situation where they believe that Governor Cook of the Federal Reserve Board has engaged in misconduct based on financial transactions, apparently that took place before she was on the Fed. But if they're going to establish that, then they're going to have to really build the case that if there was this mortgage fraud, that it did rise to the level of misconduct and not just sort of an inadvertent or an inattention to detail or something like that. So I would think, again, we don't have a roadmap because we haven't seen this before, but if you're the Trump administration, you want to make sure you get your ducks in a row to establish the idea that Governor Cook of the Federal Reserve had engaged in something that would disqualify her from office. We haven't seen the facts yet. It's going to be interesting to see what does come out regarding these allegations, but it's the first time we've seen this attempted. And again, this is one of the things I would fully expect that the Supreme Court is going to be making the ultimate decision.
Unprecedented, absolutely. John, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you.